My Life in Letters. Let's do it again. On the phone today from California. Man, I'm so excited, dude, because like we go back a long time, old homies. Haven't talked to you. We just said in 100 years, and so it's like it's like a byproduct of this podcast that I actually get to like reconnect with old friends, and it's great. So, yeah, we got Quake, Quake on the phone from CBS, X Vandals, Tits Crew, and for me, Lord's Crew. That was like growing up in the Bay Area. Everybody knew Lord's Crew, and you were known and feared. And anyway, listen, boss, dude, thanks for coming on the show, Quake.
My pleasure. It's great to reconnect with you, to say the least.
Yeah, man, definitely. I've been watching you. It's kind of the benefits of Instagrams that you can see people, and you've been doing it. You've been staying consistent. Which I just did an interview the other day with Wayne from COD, and we talked a lot about consistency and just being able to like continue to produce work, and you've done that, and it's great.
It's a grind, to say the least.
Yeah, man. But what we like to do is go back to an era when we were grinding a whole lot less, when we were kids, and we were talking before the interview about what your early experience or your early kind of trappings with letter making, mark making was. Do you have a memory that you can share with us about your early memories of letter?
Well, I probably, looking back, kind of reflecting back, I think probably my biggest influence originally would be record covers, LP, vinyl record covers and such. For my 5th birthday, my father wasn't living with us at the time. He had moved out to California, and I was still in the Midwest. And he had sent me out Queen, Night at the Opera, and I was kind of infatuated. It was kind of one of the first possessions I remember owning.
Do you remember what was on that album cover? Because I don't.
I remember it. It actually has. It's mostly lettering. You know what I mean? It's a font. It's a cursive font, but
nice.
It kind of would sit in. Like growing up, that's pretty much what we did. I guess our generation is you would put on a pair of headphones and you would sit back and you would be absorbed into this vinyl experience, and the whole while pretty much just gazing at the visual, at the gatefold or whatever. The album artwork was. I mean, that was a huge part of it. I'm sure for anyone is holding it and experiencing it pre-digital. You have something tangible that you're absorbing while you're taking in the music. So it kind of was, I guess, a digital experience prior to that, even in an analog world, before that existed.
I totally remember like going to my older cousin's house in San Francisco in the early 80s, and we have photos like at Christmas of that exact thing, like two of us in front of a record player, big old headphones on, holding like a, I think he was into Styx. Like I remember just having lots of Styx albums in my hands. And
Renegade.
Yeah, bro. And so you're saying that that was kind of your thing as well, like music album covers. That was the first time you noticed lettering, and that was in the form of logos or album art.
It was, probably more like graphic stuff. My dad had an extensive record collection. My father's actually, growing up, was a blues guitarist in Chicago, and so I kind of grew up traveling on a school bus, and pretty much our real possession was pretty much music equipment and his record collection. That's pretty much what we rolled around with.
That's cool,
was,
man.
just basically whatever we could listen to or play, and it had a huge influence on me, especially from a musical aspect. I mean, I was a musician long before I ever considered being an artist.
And you were born in Wisconsin.
I was born in Milwaukee. Yeah, I was born in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you said you were 5 years old when you saw that Queen album. So in 75, were you still living in Milwaukee?
I was living in Milwaukee in 75. My father had moved out to California, to San Francisco, and he was trying to form a band out here. Actually, originally he moved out here because in hopes of joining Journey. And
really?
he basically, he's a really awesome guitar player. He can play pretty much any instrument, but he moved out here in hopes of either joining the Grateful Dead or Journey, and he ended up kind of going to San Francisco. A lot of that fell through, and he started his own band called San Francisco in San Francisco.
Nice.
And
did they record?
They did. I think he still does that. I think he still has real recordings of a lot of that old stuff. You know, I've actually asked him multiple times to dig it up, but who knows where everything's buried in his life, you know?
Right.
A lot of skeletons in that closet.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so then how much longer did you live in Wisconsin before you went out west?
So then I came out here. He came back, and once he got settled in San Francisco, he came back and he got us in 1976. I've been here since.
76, you move out to the Bay Area, and you're 6
Correct.
years old.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm curious about all the music, and if you have any other recollections of, I don't know, album art, poster art, because I mean, basically you came to the Bay during a real special musical time.
I did.
And so like on the heels of the sort of summer of 69, moving into this whole new phase of sort of what I would think of like a lot of rock and roll was coming out in the mid 70s. Do you have any recollection of that, or of more lettering that might have come to you from moving to San Francisco?
Well, actually, I can even probably my first experience trying to speak out with words is actually on the way here. I recall stopping in Salt Lake City, and there was all these rock spellouts, and people would spell out their names. So I think like just even on my travel to here, I actually remember writing my name in the Salt Lake area with rocks in the desert. So that's cool. Probably, that could probably be my first graffiti experience, thinking back.
It sounds like it could be. Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so then, like, how did things progress? Like, I just from knowing the Bay Area and being there was actually, and also I should say, knowing the Bay Area and these interviews that I've done with guys who are older than me, there was quite a bit of graffiti that was happening in the Bay Area in the mid 70s. None of it was the very like New York inspired. A lot of it would be either people call it stoner graffiti. There was just, a good old fashioned punk graffiti, and of course, Spy talked quite a bit about the protest graffiti that he saw in San Francisco when he was growing up in the same era. What's your first memory when you were in California of seeing some of those kinds of graffiti? And this can be many years after you moved, obviously, after you were 6.
No, I would actually delve directly into that. I got exposed to when I moved here. Quickly, I was exposed to rip-off comics and Fabulous Freak Brothers. My dad and his whole little crew were all rocker, stoner types. So it was nothing to have those kind of things around. So I was exposed to a lot of that. And one of my father's first gigs in California was he was a special effects man for Mabue Gardens, which is a really famous punk venue. Mm-hmm. So in the 70s, he was doing special effects, which at that time was basically a bubble machine and I think a fog machine, which was a smoke machine essentially.
Okay.
And so I would actually be able to cut school and go to shows at the Mab as early as probably 8 or 9 years old. Wow. So I directly came in through the Bay Area punk scene. Is actually my background, predating hip hop by a long shot. Before
do you remember some of the shows you might have seen as a 9-year-old at that club?
I remember basically seeing. The ones that stick in my head are Dead Kennedy shows, but a lot of that stuff, I don't. It's so far gone for me. I returned to that when I was probably about 12 to 13. I started going to shows on a regular, but it was a whole different scene, and I almost feel like the early punk would be pretty much associated with a lot of what we consider punk nowadays. Like if you do listen to any old, really old punk, it's a little different, but I got heavily back into it with bands like Fang and Fear and stuff that was going on, and Bad Brains, all the early groups that ended up coming through here. I continued to go to shows, and places. I pretty much grew up at the Mabley Gardens, the Farm, Rock on Broadway, and the Stone, because eventually I kind of went over into the metal direction.
Mm.
And I think that also has a lot to do with my influence is definitely more of a heavy metal punk rock background.
Yeah.
So that involves a lot of logos and sharp edges and probably darker subject matter than the fun New York background stuff. And that definitely
and that was at 9 years old that you were getting that introduction.
Yes, correct. Yeah. I was definitely delving into that world and noticing people writing stuff on walls. And mostly, where I grew up in Northern California, it's a bit outside San Francisco where we ended up landing permanently.
Where was that?
That was up in Marin County.
Mm-hmm.
So up in that area, there was a heavy blue collar stoner background, and a lot of times with my crew and the younger guys coming up, I tell them a lot about the stoners, and the stoners were a bunch of badass guys that wore Frisco Derby jackets, steel toe boots, and fucking cut off t-shirts, and would bomb constantly Black Sabbath and do things like this. Like I remember people spray painting everywhere for Sabbath and Ozzy and stuff like that. And that, I'm sure New York had a lot of that background as well.
Sure
if you
did.
look back, you can see that.
And actually, all cities that I've been interviewing people, same experience, man. It's so interesting.
Crazy.
And it makes sense, right? Because it was it was a scene, it was a new movement, it was really fresh. That music was making people nervous. So of course you're gonna go and how can you be a part of that? Well, you can go and spray paint the AC/DC logo, underneath a bridge in your suburban town. And so you remember seeing Sabbath, you remember seeing those stoner guys tagging Sabbath tags, or did you see them, or did you just know they were doing it?
No, actually I saw in the neighborhood I grew up in, I would see people writing Def Leppard and frickin', this is like during, High and Dry days, like way old stuff, like Blue Oyster Cult. A lot of people would do the Blue Oyster Cult logo and Sabbath and Ozzy, endless. So, I even remember one of my girlfriends got busted for doing an Ozzy spray paint logo from basically on our main street in our town, from end to end on the whole street, from lane to lane. It was this huge thing that made the paper. And so,
that's so good.
It kind of intrigued all of us. Like, we all need to be going out there doing that. We don't know why we're doing it or what it means.
Man? I got to get her on the podcast. She sounds like a beast.
Yeah. She became a badass stripper later on. Yeah. So
there you go. Yeah. Okay. And hey, what year was that she did that big Aussie thing?
Oh God, that's got to be, I would say that's got to be in early 80s.
Yeah. Because that was your girlfriend at the time. Yeah.
No.
Oh, just a friend.
Yeah, just a friend of mine. A good friend. But people were doing stuff like that, associates and friends. Everybody was kind of pushing each other to do something, I feel like, outside your comfort zone, so to speak, or outside the status quo norm.
Absolutely. And what was your thinking as if we're going to get to 1980 or so, like you're like 10 years old, like, it sounds like you've had a unique childhood as far as, one, you grew up in multiple different places, so you had that understanding. Then there's this musical influence from your dad, plus the club scene in San Francisco in the late 70s, early 80s, which had to be really, really unique. What was young Quake thinking about when you saw those Sabbath tags, or your friend that did the Ozzy thing? Were you getting interested in doing that yet?
Well, thinking back then, like I started skating in the 70s as well. And basically, I really grew up wanting to be a stoner. I just wanted to be a badass and, go out there and kick people's asses and fuck shit up. That was like my background and my view, and that's what I saw, and that's what I aspired to be. Just like anything when around you, you look up to something around you. Well, the people that were around me were crazy dudes that everybody feared. You walked on the other side of the street when you saw those guys coming down the street, So I wanted that same respect, and I wanted that same, maybe somewhat of a fear factor that to put into people, that they would feel my presence. I wanted people to know I was there and who I was. so to speak. And I think I guess a lot of that carries over into graffiti, except it's more of a faceless thing, which I actually enjoy even more. Is the work speaks for itself, or the word of mouth about the people doing it speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be that the people meet you, or you show up and intimidate them physically. I would prefer to influence, inspire, and intimidate all in one through my artwork.
which is like that's a tricky balance of elements, yeah. And actually, graffiti artists do that really well. That balance.
They do.
But so, definitely. As a 10-year-old kid, I doubt that was very well balanced at the time. So, what happened first? Like, how did it all start for you?
Well, I mean, I basically kept with the skating thing for quite a few years. I mean, probably up until the late 80s.
And I'm guessing in the 70s, when you started in your neighborhood, every kid was getting a skateboard, like in a lot of California neighborhoods?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up next to an old skateboarder, or what he called sidewalk surfing, that was from Hawaii, and he came over from Hawaii. So he had a collection of Hawaiian skateboards. We couldn't afford anything. He would actually let us ride his skateboard. So that's kind of how I got into that. His name was Brian. That's about as far as I remember. He was a lot older than us.
Brian the Hawaiian? Come on, man. Are you serious? The OG. Come on. Don't fuck with
Brian the Hawaiian. That was my neighbor. So we grew up riding his boards. And I mean, this predates, obviously, what we know as a skateboard today. So this is still when they had penny boards and all that smaller stuff. But he had a little bit of a bigger board. So we would go over there and use his stuff, and that got me into being a skater at a really young age. And as we all know, through skating, you travel and you seek spots no different than graffiti.
Yeah.
And so my background's directly also tied into skating. I didn't really realize what hip hop, graffiti, or New York subway writing was much later.
Do you remember the skate culture, besides taking you to spots? Do you have a memory of when, like, the gear, either the boards or the clothing or whatever, when that started to bring some graffiti to you? Because I've had just a lot of guys talk about, like, the Vato Rat, or the first Powell Peralta ad they saw had some tag looking style in it. Do you remember that? Did it come along with the skateboarding?
Yeah, I guess some of it did, honestly. I mean, my first artistic memory of me creating art, actually in a real sense of art, was probably in about 1983. Was I wanted to get a Powell board, and I couldn't afford it. We were broke as fuck, so I couldn't afford anything that expensive. So I got an old skateboard and I sanded it down myself, and I did a Venom black metal, like the album cover from Venom.
Oh, nice.
I did a Venom skateboard, all painted by hand, and that was probably one of my most prized possessions. Like, I did that, and I can do some dark art too. So
nice. And what did you paint that with?
I assume just acrylics or something. I don't know what I even did it with, because I didn't really have access to much. Pretty much anything I had access to was from probably racking or borrowing from somebody else at that age.
And so you sanded it down, you painted your own thing on it. Like you said, it was your prized possession.
It was.
And I'm curious if before that, had you been an artistic kid? Did you draw or paint growing up?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, once again, you sometimes don't know where things come from. They seem to come out of nowhere. And
especially when my father,
Yeah, totally when you're a kid. Yeah. And my father was an artist, but I didn't really recall it too much later. But I recalled it once I saw some of the paintings that were in our house, and then he told me he painted them, which I never really realized. But he was also originally an artist before he was a musician. So, I don't think that I really, other than doodling, like everyone probably did, doodling your name or whatever, really what got me into it was once I got into, like I say, punk and metal, as you started drawing skulls and doing that kind of stuff, imitating logos and stuff like we were talking about before, that everybody was trying to do your favorite band logo. And just kind of imitating other people's art, not really doing my own art.
Yeah, of course. Although you were still aspiring for this sort of stoner, fuck you, I'll intimidate,
totally.
I'll inspire.
Rebel.
Yeah, dude,
all day.
I mean, so then I'm just take a stab at it. Was your first graffiti somewhat like music or band related? The first thing you put up on a wall?
So epic. That's great that you say that. I, there's a lot of paths in my career, thinking back, or many lives that I've lived in. I really thought about this a bit last night, knowing that I was going to do this. Reflected back and remembered taking psychedelics for the first time, and I went up to an archery course where I lived in Northern California, and I spray painted
psychedelics and archery.
Yeah. Well, that was the stoner hangout. That's like where people went and did a lot of stuff. It was like a tin shed that was up in the hills that was an archery course, and we would go up there, and people would like do whatever they would do, Black Sabbath or Blue Oyster Cult things, like I said, on the sides of this building. So it's kind of like a stoner mecca building, and I went up there and I spray painted a skull, and it said, "I'm experienced," like Jimi Hendrix, "Are you experienced?" Because I felt like when I took the psychedelics, I know what he means now. Now I get it, And I was like, I wanted to express that so much. I was just like, wow. And so that probably is my very first graffiti thing, but that's awesome. It was stoner graffiti.
And that's right. And that's what you wanted to do. And so where was that shed?
God, it was in a place called Miwok Park. Wow. It's also one of the places I did some of my very first pieces after I figured out, what piecing was.
Wait, which Miwok? In Marin?
Yeah, in Marin County. Yeah.
And how old were you when you went on this trip?
Probably I'm assuming that was 1984.
Okay, so you're 14 years old or so.
Yeah, that was probably 84.
And and were you tripping on acid?
Yeah, I was actually.
Awesome. And
not the first or last time, but yeah,
sure. And do you remember a couple things? Actually, two-part question. Like, where'd you get that spray paint? And did you plot out what you were going to do? Did you draw it out somewhere, or did you just do it when you got there?
I didn't. I just did it. I got the can from my garage, just the can that was in the garage, and basically, I think back then a lot of people had spray paint for painting their bikes. This is also BMX era, so we were all heavily into BMX, and that was another first memory that I can think of too. Was, man, when I was in sixth grade, so I don't even know how old I was then. It was like 82 probably or something. I don't even know how old you are in sixth grade, but I formed a BMX racing team, and it was called RAFARS. RAFARS, RAFARS.
What's that?
Rob and Frank and Russ, Steve. There was no and Steve. Steve was just Steve. And
it could have been Rafaras, though. Rafaras would have been dope. Okay, so that was your team.
That was our BMX team, Rafars Racing. Nice. We thought we were badass, and we would mob around to the old Thrifty jumps. They had these BMX tracks behind Thrifties, and we'd go back there and we would bomb Rafars. And we actually, our logo that I came up with was a two-sided arrow. You're going all directions kind of thing. So we would always...
That's pretty cool, man.
It was actually cool. It was very 80s for sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. And you're 82. That means you're 12 actually in 16.
Yeah.
So you started Rafars. And you guys were
my first crew.
And you were putting up Rafars like where? At those BMX spots behind Thrifty, little skate spots?
Yeah. We would put them up. We would put them up at the park, but then eventually, since the logo was a two-sided arrow, we decided we would write them on every two-sided arrow sign. There's these street signs, the yellow street signs with the black background, and we would write them. We went out and we started writing them on all those. Rafars Racing, Rafars. We wanted to become...
What were you marking stuff with? What were you bringing out with you?
Back then, I think it must have just been El Marcos, or something something that simple. It was just the simplest couldn't have been anything more than a Sharpie. We didn't know
Yeah.
about big pens, so they were all probably skinny tip stoner pens, basically, you know?
And you would write Raffars Racing. That was your BMX team.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, you had brought up that like you had to spray paint in your garage, and that's totally true. That's like my memory as a child in California. There was always a ton of auto paint in the garage. So
Yeah.
for this mission out to the archery course, you grab was it a can of black for your skull?
There was a can of black. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
you go on this
engine paint.
Yeah, and I'm experienced, that's amazing, dude. Right? I mean, and so what? Do you remember your kind of feeling of putting that? I mean, granted, you're tripping, but like, what did it feel like to put up that first like big spray paint mark?
You know what? I think I probably was addicted instantly without even knowing it to the medium itself. The medium is so intense, and
it is.
Being on psychedelics, everything is intensified as it is. So I think that helped me have this lifelong passion of the medium itself. It's just such a versatile, amazing medium.
It really is. And, we couldn't have known it back then. But, I'm also interested because I think if I did my research right, 86, is that the year you attribute to starting doing real graffiti?
Real graffiti is 86 for me. Yeah,
so talk to us a little bit about 84 tripping on LSD for the first time to 86. And I'm also really interested, man, in that, so far we've been talking about Milwaukee and Marin. By 84, man, there was like a really active scene in San Francisco. Like people were hitting streets, people were hitting buses, people were doing pieces in like pits and in behind buildings. Had you seen anything in 84 that was anything like that? And had you traveled to the city much?
Well, that's really is my beginnings. The reason that I honestly attribute 86 to the year I started writing is because that's when I really started doing what I guess you would call hip hop or graffiti or whatever associated with, directly associated to train painting, style writing, like the real deal stuff. But in 84, 85, I was going to a lot of these skate spots and, basically picked up my own moniker from a DRI sound, which is probably 85 was my first real name. There was a song that DRI did called Couch Slouch, and I decided I would start writing slouch because I felt like I was always not producing enough and I was being lazy. I was always very hard on myself for the amount of art or anything that I produced, my production. I always felt like I was never doing enough. That was kind of my outlook. So
you started writing
Slouch, and that predates me doing real graffiti. Once again, that was kind of my, I guess you could say my skate or my moniker, my street name, or
so were you writing
nickname.
Slouch and Raffars, or were you?
No, this is Raffars way gone. I mean, that stopped, and that stopped when I was in 7th grade in middle school.
You just wrote Raffars for like a year with your buddies, or something? And then but were you doing? Also, after the skull, now you're like using spray paint in 84. Did you continue to tag with spray paint? And
no, I never did again for a while. Actually, I didn't use spray paint again for quite some time. I basically was just using pens. I mean, I think in between 84 and 86, I found out about pilot markers, so that became my weapon of choice, and I pretty much made sure I had a pilot on me wherever I went. And I started, this is kind of the period that I really got into going to shows at the Farm and the Stone and on Broadway and going to these concerts. So I would take buses to San Francisco, and that's when I really kind of got exposed to Frisco hand styles, or, what people would call bus hopper style, locals call bus hopping.
That one flow.
The one flow, I got completely saturated in one flow. So I started taking like a little notebook with me, as early as 84, and just trying to duplicate some of these hand styles I saw to get like new ideas. But I had no idea where it came from. Like, what was the culture behind this? Like, didn't seem to be punk, didn't seem to be metal, skater.
Mhm.
It just kind of was like its own little subculture, its own world, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of would just take this thing around. I mean, and I started seeing things like UB40 jams, J Loves A, seeing
Mhm.
some of these tags like in more places than one, and that's kind of when I realized that people were doing this on a much larger scale than I was doing it.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't just doing one skate spot; they were taking it to the streets, and it also started to kind of register that the spot was as important as the tag, if not more important. You know,
Mm.
so these guys were hitting spots that you were like, how did they get that? How did they, how did these guys do this? How did they do that? And you're looking at everything like, I just don't get what, I kind
Yeah.
of
And that's really
was
interesting, man.
overwhelmed.
I also wonder, was there any part of you that was like, I'm a Marin kid out here in the city where I'm I'm different? Like, was that a part of you? Were you looking at those city tags
Well,
as like, whoa, these guys are city guys?
yeah, there probably was. I mean, I originally I lived in the city, so I always felt a connection to the city.
Mm.
And when I moved here, that's where we lived at first, and then we
Okay.
moved out to kind of a cheaper place. We just couldn't afford it then, which God knows what it's like now, So,
Ridiculous. Yeah.
yeah, so we headed up north to where it was a little bit more affordable,
Okay, so you kind of
and
felt comfortable when you would come back into the city.
yeah, and I still had friends there. I still had like
Right.
being in the punk scene. Like I grew up with a lot of these dudes, so I would see people. Most of my friends were city boys, actually.
Mm.
So I
Okay.
knew that I lived up there, but there was I mean, graffiti back then. It wasn't like you just went online and found somebody and talked to them. Like you had to go out there and meet people. And I
Yeah.
didn't meet people for a lot of years, so most of my friends were kind of either stoner punks or metalheads or skaters. I had all these different circles I ran with, but I didn't have a group of graffiti writer friends. I mean,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
first people I met that wrote, one of them was from Frisco, and another one was from Northern California, and they were in a punk band together, and they were NBC crew. They were Nobody Cares, or the Nobodies.
Mm.
Doesn't make sense now I think about the NBC part, but yeah, it was Nobody Cares,
Hmm.
and they were kind of a punk crew, and that's kind of like who I roll with. They were the first dudes that like kind of teach me about, I guess, different kinds of pans and
Mm.
where they, like you get up in punk venues, you get up here, you skate, you do, like kind of like more of a lifestyle thing that I wasn't really so familiar with. So they had a pretty large influence on
That's
me.
interesting. I'm also interested because you said that that's who you were rolling with. I was thinking a second ago, how were you actually rolling to the city? Would you like bike across the bridge? And
Bus. No,
you'd take
I
the
was I
bus.
was
Okay.
Golden Gate Transit all day
Nice.
over the Golden
Yeah.
Gate Bridge. I took buses, so that
And so then
and
where
that
would you get off and like kind of start to go throughout the city? Because you were talking about the one flows you were seeing, and I was thinking, oh, was he going out to the avenues and seeing that? Were you
avenues.
going to the
Yeah,
mission? Okay. Um,
19th Avenue. Get off right on 19th and take Geary
mm,
all the way down to the Mission. Honestly,
yeah.
you just skate all day, and you would like I would see all the old school like bus hopping stuff like Armed Crew, and
Mm.
guys like Form that were just killing it back then,
Oh
and
yeah.
BVD Darks. Darks was one of
Hmm.
the
Of
first
course.
Darks in Black.
Yeah.
Some of these guys. So I was seeing all that, and like I said, I still was from this different background. I didn't really meet any writers
Also,
per
were those
se.
some of the guys that maybe you said that you were kind of copying hand styles? Would those have been some of the names that you were seeing? Because I mean, I don't remember seeing Form in the early '80s like that. So I'm just curious
Yeah.
if who you do remember in that time when you said you were kind of learning and even copying or biting those hand styles.
I remember like two of my, or probably crew wise, one of my biggest influences back then was THK, and it was guys like seeing like Cover and Shelter and Ivory and 2-1, seeing like all those guys stuff, and
Yeah.
understanding that people were connecting letters. That's actually what I didn't get, is how they connected those letters. I mean, so there was a lot of mystery involved in my upbringing in graffiti
Yeah, I'm
because
sure.
like
And
I didn't.
I also wonder about the mystery of that you're familiar with stoner tagging, with punk and
Yeah,
music graph. Now you're coming into the city and you're seeing something new that is it's a one flow style. It's clearly not an AC/DC logo. It's more individualized. Can you recall like maybe some of what your understanding as a 14 or 15-year-old kid was for what you were seeing?
well, the letters were so developed, which
Mhm.
first off is really hard, even just in handwriting itself, or
Yeah.
doing legible calligraphy or cursive, which, a lot of us are influenced by these things.
Yeah.
It's so hard to obtain perfection in that. So when you see people that can make a letter stand so strongly alone and then they connect them all together
Yeah.
into one thing, it's just mind boggling. It's like, wait, how can you do both of those things? I can't even do one right now. So, like I said, there was a lot of mystery, and you know, basically, as an art form, I had so much respect for this, and there was so much mystery in this whole game itself that I took a lot of years just traveling to San Francisco just to see it, and I would go home and literally go back to the lab and go back there and try and study and practice and I mean, there's so much mystery. Like I said, like I remember first time I saw split streakers. There was a guy up in Northern California, and at this time there wasn't many writers in Northern California.
I'm sure.
Um,
Yeah.
there was a guy Can't Stop Eating CSE
That's an
that came
awesome
out to
tag.
yeah Buck Tinkerman, man. He's a badass. He had style for days. He brought a lot of style up to Northern California, and people started writing with the bus hop flow. But that's much later.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when I started, there was none of that.
But
And
there
then
was those NBC guys you said, and I'm
yeah, but
curious.
they were just straight punkers, though.
Okay, but they
Like
were
I
teaching
mean,
you about markers and about a few other things that might have been
correct.
slightly more associated with like the graffiti culture.
Yeah, they were kind of teaching me more about the fuck the world culture. I
And
think is
well,
a
and
better
also
way
the
to
fact
put
though
it,
that they had
right?
a
For
crew,
the system.
but they had a crew that they had abbreviated, which I know that actually a lot of a lot of bands did that as well. But
Yeah.
okay, so they were teaching you how to fuck shit up or fuck the world. You just said, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah, they were just kind of they kind of opened my eyes to the system
okay.
and buck the system, and you know what I mean. And this is what cops are like, And I mean, I already had that background anyway because my dad was always like that. Like he never was part of society or agreed with the system, the ideals of the norm. These things were all things that we were meant to rebel against, and
Sure.
that's something I was born into.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother situation is how deep you can get into all that as
Yep.
well. I mean, that's also a lifelong learning experience
It
as well,
is.
like
It
art
totally
is.
is. Yeah, and I'm interested. You were talking about like that there was a lot of that the whole thing was sort of shrouded in mystery, and I can
Yeah.
identify with that. And I was actually that suburb kid who felt nervous when I moved up there to go to high school in the city, and I just didn't understand in 1991 like what was going on. And now I'm trying to imagine myself in your shoes, 85, coming in from Marin,
Yeah.
and it was really happening. And I wondered if you had rolled down past like Psycho or the areas where people might have been already piecing at that time, or
Well,
did that
yeah.
come
So
later for you?
that's a lot later for me. So like really, the first piece I ever saw was at Bolinas Beach, actually, strangely enough, which later on became a yard, but
Yeah.
for years we did it illegally and fought the locals and had many years of battling to get the space out at this wall. But Cuba did a piece out there in, I believe, 84 to 85. And
Oh,
that was the
wow.
first
That
time
was the
I ever
first.
saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't even get it. It registered as something, but I don't know what it registered as because I didn't really even understand what it was, to be honest.
But when you saw it, were you out there partying on Bolinas Beach?
Yeah.
Okay. And so
Yeah, we
was
go
it
out there.
just sort of environmental in a way? Like it was just there. Clearly someone had done it. It clearly meant something, but it didn't register for you, or you weren't interested.
The process itself didn't register. I didn't understand how you could do something that large.
Okay.
it was more of a
was it clearly
scale.
a Cuba letters?
No, I couldn't read it. At that time, I wasn't able to even probably decipher the letters, because it took a lot of years. That took a lot of years in itself.
Sure, of course. And to Cuba's credit, he was really pioneering a lot of stuff early on.
Yeah,
I'd love to get that guy on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested, right? Now you understand the one flow hand style. You've done your own rock and roll stoner thing. Then you see a Cuba piece. How did it all start to come into one place where you could then have a better understanding, less mystery, and you could then put the pieces together to make your own thing in '86? How did it all happen?
Perfect. Yeah. So what happened was in probably early '86 or late '85, I met my first writer. Actually, first guy that I met that was actually a writer. It was a guy that wrote "Missing in Action," MIA, and he started writing "Missing in Action" in probably '83. And he was a breakdancer, and that's why he wrote. He went to my high school and basically was in this like breaking crew, and I kind of always thought they were kind of goofy because I was a little more into some different stuff at that time. You know what I mean? I was a little more hard edged, so my mind wasn't quite. I didn't really get what was going on, and I'm some of my old friends had moved out to Vallejo, and there were some breakdancing crews out there, so I was familiar with breaking, and I'd seen in Vallejo and the real early '80s, but I hadn't really experienced it in my area in Northern California. So I met these guys. At first, I was kind of standoffish, but one of them approached me, and he was like, "Yo, I heard you write Slouch. You're the one who's getting up Slouch everywhere." And he actually called me a writer, and I was like, "Oh, what?" Like, I didn't even understand the term itself. I didn't know there was like a label. It was kind of it kind of was against everything that was ingrained in me to label anything. I mean, I was doing this shit, so I didn't have to be labeled or have to be classified in a category. So I was kind of like standoffish to dude, like, like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, I ain't no writer or nothing like that. I just get up, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just doing my thing. And slowly but surely he kind of whittled on me. Like, I would see him in the smoking section. But this is back when you had like smoking sections in school. He kind of just kept whittling on me, and he was like, and then finally I kind of was like, I hadn't met a writer yet. So I kind of had to go home and like process this and think about it. Like, whoa, now I finally have some insight to this world. Like, I have a dude that is, that could probably show me some stuff or something. So I had to kind of think about it, but he wasn't like the kind of dude I would normally hang out with. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it took a minute to be like, okay, like, I can fuck with this guy and kind of get some information and stuff. So I started talking with him, and then, to think about, I didn't even know about like mean streaks. He taught me about mean streaks. He taught me about how to make homemade shoe polish mops, and I that was just mind blowing to me that we get into this chemistry and, kind of this little science project and kind of build our own tools. It was amazing. I didn't even know you could, like, when I saw split streakers, I thought dudes took two streakers out and they did like a shadow, and I was like, how do they get it so damn perfect? Like, I didn't know you could split the things,
so dental floss.
yeah. So like, he taught me that. He taught me like how to soak streakers and different inks to get different colors in them. And
man. I'm guessing that there were like probably a handful of writers in '85 era.
No, he was only writer, but
really?
there were in Marin, like, say Northern California. I just always label things Northern California.
Yeah, okay.
So Northern California, there was a guy that wrote Jest UC, and he ran the show. Jest UC was in Northern California, and he was a direct descendant of CSE. CSE brought hand style to Jest. Jest brought up a character that wrote 2/10. So 2/10 was one of the first writers, and then it came up to where I lived, and then that's further up north. Then there was only MIA. That was the only dude up there. And then past us, like, you go up to like Petaluma, there was a writer that wrote Excalibur. I don't know who that dude was, or never still to this day have ever heard where he was from or who the dude was. And then you went all the way to Santa Rosa. There was a dude that wrote Shaw, and Shaw is like the leader of the Zulu Nation up there in Northern California, and he's always been a DJ, and he's been involved in more of a hip hop thing. But pretty much that was it. There wasn't a whole lot of. It was literally a handful of writers in all Northern California as a whole, not even one city. You know?
I mean, it's like I'm surprised by that, but I'm just gonna completely trust you because I think you know. But this dude MIA, he's at your school. Also, how do you think he knew that you were Slouch? Was it just like common knowledge, or was he just did he search it out? You think? How do you know?
I think he searched it out because finally somebody else was doing it. So he basically kind of started inquiring around, and since like all the skaters hung out at what was called the Memorial, which was the smoking section, all the skaters hung out there, all the punk rockers, all the metalheads, they all just congregated together, common bond, smoking weed. So basically,
so that's how he knew. But also, you were putting Slouch tags around. Here and there.
I was putting him everywhere. I was putting him at all the spots that he would be hanging out at. Let's put it that way.
And also, was he older than you or same age?
He was, I think. Okay, so this dude actually ended up writing later solo. So even Psycho City era, he was the guy that wrote solo at Psycho City. Was missing in action.
His name to solo. Okay.
Yeah. He became solo around this time when I met him. And so he knew CSE, and he had known Jest, and he knew that like guys would congregate at this, this is skating days, so they would congregate at parking lots like Yardbirds, and they would skate the red curbs, and basically he knew where everyone was. Like sometimes they chill over here at the Double Rainbow ice cream shop, and sometimes they're over here. So he started like letting me know where the writers' benches were essentially.
Well, I'm really interested in this MIA cat because something that comes up a lot in just my discussions with people, not even just these interviews, but I talk a lot about mentorship and like and how it's completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And so what is interesting to me is when I hear of someone like MIA for you, this guy had a really profound effect on you. And I don't know how much you even had a chance to give that like credit, because this is a guy you're telling us who's teaching you how to mix markers. He's basically giving you a whole bunch of insider information that probably took him a long time to learn, and he's just passing it, which is like people don't do that anymore. So I'm curious, like, do you know more about his story? Who brought up MIA? I know you mentioned Jest and all these other cats. Do you know who specifically brought him up? Was it Can't Stop Eating?
No, I think he was one of those cats that had seen Star Wars, and he'd seen the PBS when it aired, and he had seen Subway Art, the book, because he introduced me to that as well. After we started kind of kicking it. Yeah. But I think he just kind of influenced himself. Honestly, he never told me of anyone bringing him up. He just became a b-boy, and he was like, this is just part of b-boying. I do this too, so he wasn't much of like,
I'm glad
that he wasn't a bomber.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Hold on a second. I'm glad that you brought up Style Wars because, many people from the Bay have, in my interviews, have brought up that it was aired. I think it was fall of 1984, and it had a really it hit a lot of people really hard. But did you not watch that PBS special?
No, I didn't. I was out at concerts and shows and skating. I was never inside, so there was no sitting home watching TV for me. I was out there doing it. You know what I mean? Like so, whatever I was doing, I was trying to be out there and be active in it. I wasn't.
So MIA had seen it. When did you then get your first chance to see Style Wars?
I couldn't even remember. I would say that would probably be 86, 87 maybe. Okay. He did have VHS copies of stuff, so he'd show me a lot of breakdance and stuff, and that wasn't really my thing. I had respect for it and stuff, but I was already involved in so many the origins and beginnings of so many subcultures growing up in the Bay with punk rock and so much good old thrash metal, being from the Bay, going to Slayer and Metallica and Exodus shows back in the day, that I was kind of open at that point to pretty much anything. This was kind of like, to me, he opened the last Pandora's box, and I was like, okay, now I got to delve into this and understand everything about it, like I have every other subculture.
And that's cool, man. That just like your interest, your thirst for it. And then it sounds like MIA, like at least what you're saying is that he didn't really have a mentor that you think, but he just picked up all this stuff from as many outlets as he could, like seeing Star Wars on PBS or whatever else he had found. And now he's passing that on to you. Did he also pass on letter form or letter structure to you?
Yeah. I think later he did. He at the time I met him, he was more of a character dude, which is I think anyone who remembers solo characters, he was pretty famous for being kind of on some like. He was all into the Chrome Angels later on, and he was trying to duplicate like some Mode 2 kind of craziness.
Who
so
wasn't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so he was more of that. So.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like we, haven't gotten yet to even your first piece in '86, but I really. It's so important that we've been talking about MIA. Because again, I think mentorship is really an important thing to talk about and just remind ourselves that used to happen. You always had someone who brought you up and taught you the little teeny tricks of the trade, because you couldn't just go Google it, right? Or you didn't see 100 writers doing a legal wall in one day. You couldn't just learn everything. And so, will you just now walk us through a little bit into that first piece that you ended up doing? How did you get there? What were the steps from MIA that led you to your first piece?
Well, like once I had met MIA and kind of, I'd say like, opened my mind a little bit more to the piecing aspect of it. I actually had another psychedelic trip in San Francisco where one of my boys that I did tag with, he wrote Caress at the time. He showed me Psycho City, and that was, now I think about it, that would be 87.
Okay.
So we went to Psycho City, and I remember seeing a Razor piece, and we stayed there all night looking at this silver, and it was a silver with a red outline, like a cherry red outline or banner red outline with white highlights, and I had never seen anything that dope. Like I saw this Razor piece and it just melted me. I was like, oh my God. And like literally that's when I'll say I like just fell in love. I was like, oh wow, like you can do something that hard, all these hard edges. I had like a razor in it. It had like a character with like a razor blade, and I was like, whoa, this is what I want to do. This is hard right here,
But
this is what
that
I
was
want.
in '87, and you said that your first piece was in '86. So
no, I didn't even start. Like I was just bombing, so
okay, sure, gotcha.
What happened to me is in '86, like Solo took me to do a piece. Like he's like, I'll show you how you do this stuff, right? So he took me and he did this sketch, and it said boogers, and it was like a character picking his nose, and it said boogers, and I was like, that's not like, I'm not really down with that. That's not like what I'm trying to do, So I went with him, and I remember it took six cans, right? And the whole time I'm thinking, how much I can get up with these 6 cans. I can go from one end of the city to the other bombing and getting up. Like that's a complete fucking waste of paint right there. So I wasn't really into the whole piecing thing. I was like, I don't think I really want to do this, like I was kind of questioning where I wanted to go with it. I enjoyed the illegal aspect of it and just smashing shit,
exactly.
Yeah, like he turned me on to these mops, so I was getting up on green heaven signs and doing fat white mop tags, and that brought me out of this world. It was the best high I ever had. It was just like,
what were you guys filling those mops with? I meant to ask that earlier because he taught you.
Actually, we had what is it? The One Flow? Is that what it's? One Flow inks?
Flowmaster
inks. Yeah, they came in these little kind of metal canister, the Flowmaster inks.
Nice.
So we were using these Flowmasters. At least that's what I was taught. And so once we started getting like different colors other than black, it was just on. It just changed the whole game for me. And I was like, I don't ever want to this is my new thing. This is what I'm going to do.
Crushing, just bombing.
Yeah, just bombing. And we had formed a crew, like MIA and me formed a crew together, and that was I guess in 86 or 87, and it was called Ink Crew. So we all had numbers. We were like, he was Ink 1, which was the Ink King, and there was this other guy that was Ink 2, and then I ended up being Ink 3. And this went on for years. Like, I think we got to like Ink 12 eventually. But
really?
So this went on for the first couple of years. We were Ink Crew, but once I saw this Razor piece, I think a lot of that kind of registered differently. And then I ended up meeting Doug, and that just changed everything for me. He was doing this Alfred E. Newman character at Psycho City, outside of Psycho, on this little building. And
is this 87?
I don't even know what year that is. Yeah, I guess that probably would be 87, maybe 88. But, once I saw kind of like the Razor and the Doug, the extent of what you're capable of doing, I was like, kind of, I guess, reconsidering where I was going to go with things. And then I ended up getting popped. I caught a really, really bad case. I got like a 37 count vandalism case, and it turned into this whole thing.
Really? What year did that go down?
That was just in 88.
So they must have been kind of putting together something on you for a while if they had 37.
Yeah. I ended up making like the front page of the paper and that whole.
So wow. Okay, so let's back up just a teeny bit, because where we left off, you were still writing Slouch with MIA. So were you? Then you created Ink Crew. What were you tagging in 80, 86, 87? Were you putting up Slouch still?
Yeah, I was writing Slouch, and actually this, I in the 86 I came up, I kind of just went all out with that name. Let's just put it that way. I put in a lot of work, and I went kind of bonkers, maybe a little too much, pushed it to limits.
Counts, there's your 30.
Yeah. Well, yeah, somebody rolled on me, so I ended up catching them too. So I got like heavy community service, hundreds of hours. I got thousands and thousands of fine. I went to jail, and
that was in 88.
Yeah, and then long story short, like I decided, well, maybe I should be doing pieces like this. Is going to get me in a lot of fucking trouble. I can't afford to be like locked up, or I can't afford these fines that they're giving me. It wasn't even feasible, It was like way out of my league. So
and for all those 37 charges, they were all just like excessive bombing tags on things here and there, different areas of the city. It was all tags.
Yeah. And they built a huge case against me basically, and
found you guilty, and you paid money and you served time, and then I'm curious. I don't know how long it was, and we don't have to talk about it. But were you continuing to draw and work on letters while you were in there?
Well, what kind of happened was I kind of started like messing with some other fools. There's a situation that went down in Northern California where some Crip dudes moved up there from San Jose. It was the Hoover Crip family. It was a division of the Hoover Crips, HCF, Okay. And these dudes, this is kind of like when like NWA era of shit. Like everyone's rocking Raiders gear, and parkas and hats, and low brim hats, and doing that. Yeah, so these dudes moved into my town, and I guess they were on the run, and they basically kind of opened a trap house in my town, basically. And they came out with this dude that I had grown up with, who I kind of had funk with for a lot of years. And this dude his name was Dave Bouton, Wavy Davy. That's what he called himself, Wavy Davy. And Wavy Davy had done some foul stuff to some women in my town when I was in grade school, 5th grade. So he got shipped out and he got sent to Richmond. Well, he came back with these dudes, and then he started writing in my town. I was like, oh, that dude's bad news. So I started hacking Wavy Davy. So me and Wavy Davy went to war. And
Slouch and Wavy Davy.
Yeah, Slouch and Wavy Davy went to war, and they were we were battling for probably about 6 months. And then what happened was I started battling his crew, which was HCF. And basically, I didn't really know what HCF was. I didn't know that these dudes were some Crip dudes. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't really know what I was getting into. Inc was dead at this time, and I had started my own crew. I was like, I'm going solo myself. I'm gonna build my own stuff. I'm gonna mentor people and bring them up to bomb and crush and kill stuff. So I started a crew called STC. It was simply the crew. That was us. We were the crew. We just call ourselves the crew. You know, simply the crew. So STC was 3 dudes. it was me, my protege Cress, and my other boy Fry Guy. You know, we were the team, and then we had a couple other like thuggy dudes that chilled with us, but they didn't really write. You know what I mean? They were just kind of like our muscle. Yeah. And so I battled HCF for like 6 months, and we ended up. This is a real good reflection of the times back then. There was a diner called the Hi-Fi Diner, and it had gone out of business. So we battled on this diner. It was like an old A&W.
Where was
it? And
we
were right. This is in Novato, Northern California. Okay. And we rode on the diner, and then like we were battling on the diner, and then like, you know, yo, fuck you, man, you're a toy, blah blah blah. You know, we're just going back and forth every night. And then finally, this dude Frosty, 163, who I find out later is the leader, he writes on the wall like, STC, we're gonna meet you here at this time. And then he wrote on the side of the diner like, meet us at the bus stop at this time. So we went. I gathered up my muscle, and you know, there's a total of 5 of us. And we went and met, and then we get there, and there's like 20 of these motherfuckers, and we're like, what the like we see them sitting there at the bus stop, and we're like, no way, bro. And it's like every kind of dude, like, you know, there's a black dude, a Mexican dude, a Chinese dude. It's just a mob, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? Like, what do we get into? You know, So they're yelling. I'm at the Hi-Fi Diner, and I can see them all sitting at the bus stop. I'm like, all right, well, we better do this. And then so this dude Frosty's like, oh, you slouch, you know, he's like yelling across the street. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, come on over here, just you and me, we're gonna talk, right? And all his boys are going nuts, like, let's bonk them, like going like they're gonna just mob us or something, you know. I think my crew's kind of like, what the hell did you get us into, man? This is crazy, like, you know. So Frosty comes over, and he's like, come and take a walk with me. You know, he's like, I'm Frosty 163. I'm the leader, HCS, Hoover Crips, man. Like, you know, I'm from LA. I lived in San Jose or whatever. And he's like, that's your crew right there? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, there's only 5 of you? And I'm like, well, actually, there's only 2 of us that really write. There's just 5 total. And he goes, so you're trying to tell me that 2 of you took out 20 of us in the streets? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you know, that's kind of, you know, that's how we do it. And then he was just like, whoa. He's like, well, we need to link up. And I was like, what? And he's like, wow. we need to all link up. We need to become one big crew, you know? So he goes, come, he gives me the address of the trap house, and he says, come over here tomorrow, and we're going to talk. So, you know, like we end up just kind of boning out.
Again?
That's 9.
Is 88, 89?
That's 88. It's 1988.
Wait, just before all your cases went down, or?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And that's why I went into the story, because it ties directly in. So what happened was, so I go to the trap house the next day, and then Frosty tells me he knows Doug. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, check this out. So he ends up having like 2 sketches, TMF sketches, on his wall in this trap house. And I'm like, how do you know Doug? Like, what?
This is so good, man.
And like, so I'm just freaking out. Like, how's this dude that's like Hoover Crips from LA that lived in like San Jose and then somehow lived in Daly City, hooked up with TMF? Like, you know, this dude's like loped out gangster dude, like straight up, like, you know, like cornrow hair, everything, like just down to the T. Like, and he took me in, and he was like, we need to all come together. We need to unite. You know, it's time for all races to unite, all of us to rebel against the system together. He was preaching some serious knowledge. So I was like, so he came up with, we're going to start a new crew together. And I already, had been messing around with some letters, and so we came up with this together. We were the Mixed Nation Posse. We the MMP, when we were mixed people from all backgrounds, and we were all going to come together, and we were going to fight the system together, like some Public Enemy stuff. Mm-hmm. We were going to fight the system and fuck everyone except us, except our people, Mm-hmm. So we started MMP crew together, and that was real good, and that started going really good. And that's actually when I started doing some of my first kind of bigger stuff that really wasn't pieces, but they were more what I would consider throw-ups. I started doing some MMP throw-ups and stuff. But what happened was these dudes were fucking around, and these HCFs were they were breaking in the cars, and they were they ended up mobbing up on a Nissan dealership and ruining the whole lot, right? So that made the fucking paper, and they literally just bust out all the windows, spray painted all the HCF on all brand new cars on the lot. And,
gangster,
just doing some scandalous stuff. And basically what happened was I was wearing a Raiders jacket one night. I was out bombing, and they rolled up on me. And they were like, okay, you're this dude that did this stuff. So the case I caught was for the car lot. It was for everything. Whoa. So I didn't roll. They beat me up. Those dudes whooped my ass on this bridge, these cops. And they're like, we know that you're these dudes. And of course I didn't. I was like, I'm not flexing. I'm not rolling. No, I'm not doing nothing. I didn't even know they'd done the lot. I didn't even know they had done all that dirt, But basically, I ended up kind of catching that case along with my own name.
Brutal.
So that's where the heavy restitution came in. They thought, and I fought it in court, but a year later I lost, and everything just from there. I was like, okay, it's time to change my career path here a little bit. Yeah. I need to kind of separate from these dudes, and I need to kind of
hear from Frosty about that.
All those dudes, they just kind of disappeared after that. I mean, it literally was a trap house, so they kind of all just probably went their own ways, and a lot of them ended up in jail. I know, I'd hear and there about this dude's locked up here, and this guy's in this, and I was like, okay, that's not really the direction I'm trying to go. So I honestly went back to solo and was like, yo, I want to get back in this game. I don't want to be in this game right here. I need to change where I'm going, and this is the game I need to be in. I need to.
Had Solo been continuing to do? Was he just continuing to do his thing that whole time that you were doing that?
Yeah, but I wouldn't. As far as how productive, it's you look back on a scale of things. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
To look back and think back in the day in the '80s, you could do 5 pieces and you could be a legend. So you didn't. It's not like Fool's Piece every weekend or some crazy stuff. So it's you could look at someone's whole career, and it could be 5 to 10 pieces, and they would already have legend status. Well, he's kind of one of those dudes. He would do a piece once every 6 months, maybe a year.
Okay. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say he was mad active, but
but he was still doing it. And you went back to him and you said, God, I don't want to be doing that. I want to be doing what you're doing. So is that what happened? Is that what you?
That's the short of the story. He was he was a really smart dude, and he was kind of a square, to say the least. I think he was more clean cut, and he was he wasn't the guy that you would know was a writer, and then once I kind of took on this persona of what I thought these, you looked like or you acted like, I realized that was the wrong route. That wasn't how I was going to get away with shit, is looking and being a certain way. I would have to kind of adapt and blend a little bit more. And I think I saw that from looking at him, even though he wasn't doing dirt. If I kind of presented myself more like him, and kind of had this different aura about me, oh, that's just some fucking normal dude right there or something, that I would be able to get away with a lot more shit. So that's kind of the direction I went.
on your way, since this is before you were convicted of all these charges, on your way to that, were you continuing to? I presume you didn't bomb as much after you were charged with all this stuff.
Yeah.
But did you piece? Did you continue to work on letters in one way or another?
Well, so I continued to work on letters and throw-ups. I kind of understood throw-ups a little bit. And then...
like you said, you were doing those MNP throw-ups.
Yeah. And there was I went back to Psycho City, and I remember sometime in all this, I don't even know what year it is, I ended up seeing a dude that wrote Tatch Catch is the leader and founder of Graph Life Crew, who actually, I believe he's cousins of some of the TMF, or he knew a lot of people. But I took pictures of Catch. That's how I learned to do the MMP stuff, is because I didn't really understand that you did a base layer and then you outlined. I always thought you probably outlined first. Yeah, and then you try to fill that in. And so I saw Catch at Psycho City doing it, and that's kind of what gave me the idea that I could do a throw up, but I still didn't know how to do a piece. I didn't really still understand piecing. So I ended up going back to Psycho City and just chilling at Psycho City. And then I met Scoo and Cole from BVD at Psycho City. And they kind of started being like, well, yeah, Quake, you need to start piecing. You need to step up your throw up game. And so I ended up trying to attempt to do my first piece at Psycho City. That's where my first piece was.
And you just said Quake, like they called you Quake, but last time I checked, you were still Slouch. Did Slouch go with the cases? You were like, okay, I'm done with Slouch. I need a new or like you said, a new direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at this time, I had a rap name too, because I was rapping. So my MC name was Quake. So what I did is I just ended up swapping out to Quake because of my Slouch was so hot.
You know, my understanding was you were like a punk rock guy. When did you first start writing rhymes?
Well, I think I would say, I guess I would be in 86 as well, as I started my first job, and it was at a lumber spot, right? So I was working in a lumber yard. And the guy that I worked for was an older dude from Oakland, and he was a DJ at night. He was DJ Dash Riprock, right? So he kind of turned me on to like real hip hop. You know, he knew I was into he's like, you like all this like crazy punk and metal stuff, and you like it because of the message, but there's hip hop out there like that as well. So he ended up bringing me Public Enemy first album. He brought that to me and turned me on to that, you know. And then he turned me on to Ice-T as well, Rhyme Pays. And so, you know, hearing songs like 6 in the Morning and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I'm into this. Like, I really want to get into this. This is right up my alley. So I kind of just started writing rhymes.
And so did you feel like the same kind of energy that you used to get when you were younger from punk, coming out of some of that kind of hard edge rap music, hip hop music? Yeah.
Directly. And, you know, I didn't mention this before, but I was also in punk bands. So I also played instruments. I played
so you've
guitar.
Made music. So actually writing raps wasn't like a huge leap for you. You had some experience in it. Okay. And so then in this, you said it's around 86. When did you come up with MC Quake, and how did Quake become the name you wanted to rap under?
You know, I don't know like when I came up with it, but it was just something that I kind of kept on the side. I mean, even when I was writing, when I formed STC Crew, what I decided I was going to do is I was going to make people think it was a lot bigger of a crew than it was. So at that time I had multiple names. I was writing Cosmos. I was writing Easy Life. I was writing Serious. I had a lot of different names. I called myself the STC Overseer or Seer. So I had all these different names that I was like I wanted people to think that my crew was huge and be afraid of like just how big my crew was.
That's,
you know,
so
like
cool, man. Were you doing different styles for different tags?
Different styles for different tags. They would have different things, and like even you know, back in the day, if you did different symbols next to your piece, it would say you were from a different place, you know. So I would mess with halos and, you know, little side swipes, underlines, different things
marks. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the different things with each name that would accent that this dude was from a different place. So people were always kind of like, "Whoa, these dudes are a lot bigger than we thought." You know what I mean? It was kind of that.
No one ever got put down in STC. It was just you whole time.
No, there was my boy Fry Guy. He wrote a little. He wrote.
Right. I'm sorry, you said that.
Yeah.
And
He wrote
Crease.
And then Cress was my prodigy, and then we had a dude Steve Saito.
Sorry, and these are the guys that you actually went to that diner to meet up with. with
Yeah, this is my
HCF with.
crew.
Okay, sorry.
That's my crew. That's it was
Yeah.
my crew,
Okay.
but I
Yeah.
was the real writer
And
guy. I
you were
guess you
doing all
could.
those different tags. That's so cool, man. Did you document that
Yeah.
stuff? Were you doing any photography or somehow capturing some of that work?
No, I don't. Not so much. I mean, I don't know if we really like. I have some photos probably of some of my first pieces that I did, and some of the Psycho City stuff. Like when I started going to Psycho City, I started documenting, but
Yeah.
not during the tagging years.
And
There
you
was
said
nothing
that.
documented.
Okay, yeah, which is so unfortunate, man. I would just like kill to
It
see that
is.
stuff. But so you've been rapping under the name Quake for a little bit of time, but by the time you
Yeah.
go down to Psycho City, the day you meet up with Scoo and Cole, and
Yeah. And
what I'm
Cole.
wondering was, had you done any Quake tags before that day?
I'd already, I already been practicing the letters. Me and Solo were kind of working together where I do like a Quake piece and he would do the character. So I was already messing with the letters, but that particular day, Scoo and me were talking and Cole, like, they gave me some tips and they're like, just try it. At that time I was writing deep. So I did a deep piece that day. Like I said, I had multiple names. So I did
but you said that Jonas called you Quake, so he already knew of you as a rapper.
Yeah. No, not as a rep, but I was writing Quake. That was what I was getting up. That's what I was getting up at the time. And
but you
then,
were also writing deep and
yeah,
okay, and were
serious.
And so this day, and I think this is 88, yeah, when you're at Psycho, when you meet up with Scott.
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
you go down there, you still
89.
Oh,
This is 89.
You still never. And sorry, are your cases still like pending? Is the battle still going on?
Yeah, yeah. I'm still doing my cases, but I'm going to Psycho City on the weekend to kind of stay out of trouble.
Like, I also want you to just tell people that don't know, like that didn't grow up in the Bay, like what was it like to walk into Psycho City in 1989?
Oh man, that's like that. It was overwhelming. It was like,
can you describe it a little bit again for people that have never heard of it or seen it? What was it?
Well, Psycho City was, the main part of it was a Civic Center hotel. So it's like basically this trashed out like one night hotel, or in some cases people would live there, drug addicts and a lot of
they
prostitutes.
Had an hourly rate back there. You can get a room for it.
Yeah, they had hourly. They had hourly. Yeah, they totally. They had hourly rates, and there was a lot of drug dealers and prostitutes living in Civic Center Hotel. The city was pretty much in disarray at the time. So this was kind of where they swept everyone kind of under the rug, is in this little junction kind of in between downtown and the Mission. So it's kind of in between two important neighborhoods. It became kind of a meeting point. And at the time I had gone to Psycho City, it was still kind of single story. There, as far as pieces, they would basically be like eye level. There wasn't much up high. It hadn't still like gone crazy high. Like by the end of it, it was all the way to the roof almost. But
and again, for people that didn't know, it was like there's a couple of parking lots around these buildings, and the walls were. I mean, it was, what I always thought early on, it was a legal spot. It actually wasn't legal for.
No, it was never legal. I ended up actually, they tried to charge me a case there actually eventually once when they raided the place, but yeah, it wasn't legal. And basically it was just kind of a mecca, of artists from all over. Like there was people like Dream and Fresh, people coming out from the East Bay, and there was people from Daly City, the TMS who started it.
People knew as all over and people would come from all over. LA heads from further out, many different states.
They would.
People would come to Psycho City. And what was the energy like for you as a 19-year-old kid going into it on a Saturday or whatever day you were there?
Well, I would say like I made it a regular for me that it was not a religious person, so I kind of made a commitment to myself that Sundays would be my Psycho City day. So I would go every single Sunday, like the church, like this was religious experience for me.
It was a lot of worship happened there for sure.
It sure was. And it was once again coming from like this whole MMP background, this idea that like we were going to change things, and this was the movement to change the world. That's kind of like where I was at in my mind. So kind of stepping into Psycho City with that and realizing that people were coming from LA and people were coming from Europe. People were coming from all over the United States to this spot.
Yeah.
It's like this mutual meeting spot that was pre-internet. It was just word of mouth. And we were coming over here and we were exchanging ideas and backgrounds and brainstorming for new concepts. It really was like a life-changing time and place. It can't be really duplicated. You can't recreate that.
No way. Psycho was really unique, not just for the place that it was, but for the time that it was as well. I'm blown away when I think about the fact that you walked in there and Scoo, who, you know, in my opinion, is like one of the great influencers of San Francisco graffiti. You know, you just meet Scoo, which is like kind of crazy that you had that.
Well, I met everyone. Like wow, man, like my first experiences there, like I said, was me and Doug, you know, and I was like,
you said that was back in 87, 88.
Yeah, it was early on. So I just kept going back. I was like, if I'm going to meet dudes like Doug there, who I look up to, who that's my big inspiration. If I'm going to meet a guy like that, I'm going there every weekend. I'm going to meet everyone. I'm going to go head first into this culture and try to link up with everyone.
Yeah, and that's what, and it was possible to do that. I mean, that's the thing I would also try to explain, especially to these young, you know, post-internet kind of generation of writers, because it was our Instagram, it was Style Wars, it was Beat Street, it was your entire hip hop music collection in a physical place, you know? And that will never be repeated because the time is gone and we just can never go back. We don't go back, we progress, right?
Exactly.
But that's why it was so special. And like, I just thinking about it now gets me kind of like hot, you know, under the collar. Cause that place was so dope. And so why don't you tell us about that first piece then, that deep piece that you did? How'd it go down?
Oh, it was horrible. Who knows? Like I don't never even got a picture of it. I don't even remember what it looked like, you know, but it kind of
really. I mean, can we try to remember? Was it like block letters? Did it have connections or arrows?
No, it was bubble. It was more of a bubble letter.
On that throw up kind of thing. Do you remember the colors?
Yeah. No, I don't even. I think maybe. Actually, around that time, the new Krylon colors came out. So I think
that was going to be my next question, because the people always want to hear about the colors and the brands that we were.
Yeah.
So, did you have a bag of Krylon that day?
You know, I probably had a few cans of Krylon, and I had a connection that worked at like a drugstore, like a Thrifty or something, and I knew a girl that worked there, so she would let me pull carts out of it for like, you know, she charged me for one can, I pull a full cart. So I had kind of like all the Krylons. So I was using a lot of, at that time, I remember I was using a lot of mauve and like slate blue and, you know, just these kind of
colors that were popular in the day, you know.
Horrendous
why
pastels.
were they? Why were they popular? I don't know, but they just were. Lots of pastels. Yeah,
because they said new on them, so that was hot.
True.
You know what I mean? Like you wanted that new. That wasn't often that new colors came out. So when you saw something like jade green, you were like, "Oh my god, I gotta get that!"
Isn't that amazing, dude? Jade green was so sought after, and you look at it now, and it's almost gray. You're like, why was I in love with that color?
They're actually horrible colors.
It really is not that good. So, okay, so you don't even really remember, but you did a deep piece, and this is after Scoo told you that you should do it. Like you should.
No, like you know, like I already knew Cole, right? Because Cole was living at the Civic Center Hotel. Cole was living in Psycho City. You know, like him and his mom were living in that hotel. So I knew Cole from hanging out at Psycho City. So I knew him, and then like, you know, from him I met Scoo, and then they were like, "Come on, Quake, man, you're older than us, and you haven't even done a piece." Because those kids start writing when they're like 12 years old. I was like, "Oh man," you know. Yeah. So
is Cole from the Mission?
I don't know where Cole's from. I haven't heard anything about Cole in years. You know, last I heard about Cole, he was like IBC and the EMB. He was chilling out there, and then he just kind of disappeared. I'm not sure what happened. You know, like I've seen
around, but we'll have to double check that.
Yeah, I've seen Scoo like since. Like Scoo is obviously the man, you know. So I see him. But what it was they gave me a Phantom tip, and I never had a Phantom tip. You know, like I was just using stock tips to get up, and that kind of changed game right there for me too. So they gave me this Phantom tip, and I did my first piece, and it wasn't what I wanted it to be, and it just made me have that same attitude, always pushing myself. I went home and I was like, I got to get back in the lab, and I need to start doing some some work and step up my game. If I want to do this, if I want to be do this piecing thing, I'm going to have to really put some effort and time into it, just like I did with my tagging.
Just
I
like
have to
it
put
sounds
more
like
into it.
everything that you've kind of done with your life. And so then I
Yeah.
wonder, because I know that this court case is sort of like hanging over your head at this time. How many more pieces did you do before court came and you got, convicted?
Well, once I went back up Northern California, I started doing more pieces. I did like another deep piece. I think I did I also wrote haste, so I did a haste piece. I did like a couple different names. I really wasn't Quake was horrible letters. Like I don't even know why.
Well, and that was going to be my question.
I chose those letters.
I mean, it's like, and especially coming from tags like slouch, which I look at those letters and I think they're like really nice together. A lot of the tags that you mentioned, I mean, I think one of my favorite one is Easy Life. That is a sick ass tag.
Yeah, that was sick. It had a little
and then like a Q. I mean, looking at a Q in a way, you could be like, oh, that's actually an opportunity because look at that fucking little thing sticking off the end, but also like kind of tricky. Do you remember when you did your first Quake piece?
I would say, my Quake, before I wrote Quake, I think I want to say I got up into about the 20 piece mark or something before I attempted to kind of like do a Quake piece, but it was in a really short period. So it was like probably the beginning of 89 to about the end of 89. Mm-hmm. I was like even signing some of my other names with Quake, you know what I mean? Like Quake did this piece, or this is Quake doing this, but trying to actually do those letters as a piece was pretty damn hard, and they just did not flow together good. They all those letters were fighting each other all the time, and it was driving me crazy. So
and I'm curious, if what was it about the name Quake that you identified with?
Well, I'm from the Bay Area, so like I mean, the Bay's my home. Bay's my heart. I'm a Bay cat through and through. Mm-hmm. There's nothing better than Quake in the Bay. You know what I mean? Like to me, that was like it made sense. It's like this is where it happens. This is where it's at. You know what I mean? So it just made sense. The Bay Area, San Francisco, earthquakes.
Then the big one came too that year in '89.
Yeah, it did. It did. When I really started doing the pieces, that's when that really hit. So that kind of solidified. I dropped once that earthquake happened, I stopped all the other names. I was like, I've been fucking with this name Quake since '86, doing different things, but now this is going to be my focus. This is going to be my life right here. This, so
and
the end of '89.
I mean, and I think we should stop our interview here. We want our listeners to go to your work and check out our guests and what you guys are doing. Can you plug a little bit where we can find you, like what channels you're putting all your work on?
Pretty much just Quake 1986 on Instagram.
Okay, and
that's it. That's only social media I do.
Mm-hmm. No website. And
no.
That's okay. That's great. And so people go check it out and follow this man. Man. Like I said at the top of the show, because I grew up like looking at your work, so it's like an honor to be able to get you on the podcast. Awesome. And for others who don't even know you, I'm sure they're gonna feel the same thing. So man, thank you. Yeah,
of course.